Why the world keeps building longer and longer trains. So long that some now stretch over 3 miles, longer than Central Park, end to end. They're pulled by locomotives that aren't just at the front anymore. They're spread through the middle and the back too, all working in sync. A single one of these trains can carry over 200 cars, weigh more than 15,000 tons, and take 10 minutes to clear a single road crossing. Today we're looking at the economics behind why trains keep getting longer, and how that length quietly shapes the cost of the goods on your shelves, and why you might be sitting at a crossing longer than ever before. To understand how we got here, we have to look back. In the mid-1900s, a typical freight train ran somewhere around 40 to 60 cars, well under a mile long. By the 1980s, something changed. Railroads started stacking shipping containers too high on a single car. Suddenly, a train of the same length could carry roughly double the freight. Then came the next shift. Over the past decade or so, major freight railroads moved to a model called precision scheduled railroading. Essentially, instead of running more trains, run fewer, much longer ones. Today, trains over 2 miles long, more than 10,000 feet, are routine on major U.S. freight corridors. And back in 2001, on a single demonstration run in Western Australia's outback, mining company BHP coupled together 682 ore wagons into one train stretching 4.5 miles. Still one of the longest trains ever assembled. There are really two kinds of giant trains, and they got long for slightly different reasons. The first is the intermodal train, the one hauling shipping containers from ports to inland warehouses. These run on major corridors like Los Angeles to Chicago, operated by companies like Union Pacific and BNSF Railway, owned by Berkshire Hathaway. A modern intermodal train can stretch past 2.5 miles and carry the equivalent of 400 truckloads in one move. The second kind is the unit train, one commodity, start to finish, usually moving in a loop between a mine and a port. This is where the real records live. In Australia's Pilbara region, mining giants BHP, Rio Tinto, and Fortescue each run their own private railways, hauling iron ore in trains that regularly weigh over 25,000 tons. In Brazil, mining company Vale runs similarly massive ore trains on its Carajás line. The industry is also consolidating. In 2023, Canadian Pacific merged with Kansas City Southern to form CPKC, the first single railroad to directly connect Canada, the United States, and Mexico, letting freight move on one continuous train across 3 countries without switching railroads. Building one of these trains isn't cheap. A single, modern freight locomotive costs around $2 to $3 million, and a 3-mile train often needs 3 or 4 of them, spread across its length. Add in a couple hundred freight cars, and you're looking at tens of millions of dollars in equipment. So why go through all that? The logic is almost identical to shipping. A train's crew, typically just 2 people, an engineer and a conductor, costs the same whether the train is 1 mile long or 3. The fuel doesn't triple either. Locomotives placed throughout the train, working in sync, burn less fuel per ton than 3 separate trains would. And on intermodal trains, stacking containers too high means the same length of train carries roughly double the freight it used to. Put it all together, and the cost to move each ton of cargo drops the longer the train gets. But building trains this long has created problems that didn't exist when trains were shorter. Start with sidings, the short stretches of extra track where a train pulls off the main line to let an opposing train pass on single-track routes. Most sidings across North America were built decades ago, sized for trains around 1 to 1.5 miles long. A train that's 2.5 or 3 miles long simply doesn't fit. It either stops short, blocking the main line anyway, or gets split into 2 pieces and pulled through in stages, turning a 2-minute meet into a 20-minute one. To fix this, major railroads have launched multi-billion-dollar programs just to extend sidings and yard tracks to match the new train lengths. Union Pacific and BNSF have both spent heavily on this in recent years, rebuilding their networks around trains that already exist. By the way, if you are enjoying this video, make sure to subscribe because we have a lot more coming. Then there's clearance. When double stacking arrived, a lot of existing tunnels and bridges were too low for 2 containers stacked on top of each other. Entire routes, including major tunnels on the US East Coast, had to be rebuilt before double-stacked trains could run through at all. It's the same pattern every time. We used to build the tracks to fit the trains. Now we're constantly rebuilding the tracks to fit trains that are already running. And then there's the issue every driver has felt, grade crossings. A 3-mile train moving at 20 miles an hour can take 10 minutes to clear a single crossing. In towns with multiple crossings close together, one long train can block every road in and out of town at once. This has become one of the most common rail complaints in the country. Delayed school buses, missed appointments, and in some documented cases, delayed emergency vehicles. There's also a physical limit to consider. The longer and heavier a train gets, the more slack builds up between cars, the small gaps in the couplers. On curves and hills, that slack can create powerful, uneven forces, pulling the train in different directions at once. Get it wrong, and the middle of the train can do something very different from the front. In February 2023, a Norfolk Southern freight train derailed in East Palestine, Ohio. Dozens of cars came off the tracks, several carrying hazardous chemicals, leading to a controlled burn, a toxic plume, and a town-wide evacuation that made national news for weeks. Investigators traced the immediate cause to an overheated wheel bearing on a single car, not the train's length directly. But the incident put a spotlight on the operating model that produces trains this long in the first place. Rail unions had been warning for years that longer trains, run by smaller crews, with locomotives spread across miles of track, are harder to inspect and harder to control if something starts going wrong partway down the line. After East Palestine, that warning suddenly had a national audience. The other side of going wrong is quieter, but it happens every single day. When a long train stops on the tracks, waiting for a signal, a crew change, or a mechanical fix, it can sit there blocking every crossing along its length for as long as it's stopped. Local news investigations across the US have documented cases of trains blocking crossings for over an hour at a time, with ambulances and fire trucks forced to find alternate routes, sometimes adding critical minutes to emergency response times. So, how does any of this actually affect you? Rail is one of the cheapest ways to move freight over long distances, generally far cheaper per ton than trucking past a few hundred miles. Longer trains push that advantage even further because the fixed costs, the crew, the locomotives, the fuel needed just to get the train moving, get spread across more cargo. That's part of why goods that travel cross-country by rail can stay relatively cheap on store shelves. But there's a catch. A 3-mile train is also a single point of failure. If it breaks down or derails on a single track line, there's often no way around it. The entire corridor backs up behind it, sometimes for hours, until it's cleared. A shorter train having the same problem affects less of the network at once. This brings us to the obvious question: have trains gotten too long? Several US states have tried to pass laws capping train length, often somewhere around 8,000 feet. Almost all of these have been challenged or blocked because train operations are considered a federal matter, and states generally can't regulate them directly. So for now, there's no hard ceiling, just an ongoing argument between railroads, regulators, and unions about where one should be. Meanwhile, the next big shift in rail might not be about length at all. In Australia's Pilbara, Rio Tinto has been running fully autonomous iron ore trains, no driver on board, across hundreds of miles of track since 2018. And several North American railroads have been testing battery electric locomotives, aiming to cut emissions without needing the train to get any longer. The trains running today, some over 2.5 miles long, aren't going anywhere. The real question now is whether the crossings, sidings, and towns built for trains a third that size can keep up with the ones we've already built. Another fascinating part of trains is the ownership and economics. To learn more, watch this video next.